The hope and cope era continues, everybody, as we get our hopes up that the Miami Heat will finally trade for a whale who had us on their preferred destination list once again. But then we need to cope when we have to accept the reality that we're once again running it back with a mediocre roster. I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm gonna cope a lot this video, and I've been coping a lot for the last 5 hours since the news broke. In fact, this was my live reaction to Sham Charania tweeting out that Kevin Durant has been traded to the Houston Rockets. But I got a lot to say about this. I took a bunch of notes, so let's get into it. I literally just got home from the Panthers championship parade. It was an absolutely great time. Those guys definitely know how to party. It was a very well-run event, and I'm certainly glad that I went because it appears that South Florida may be a hockey town for quite a while now. The Miami Dolphins continue to be a trash-run organization from top to bottom. The Miami Marlins legit don't even care about winning anymore. And then the Miami Hurricanes, they couldn't even make the playoffs this last season with the #1 overall pick playing quarterback. They couldn't even do it. Now, I'm not surprised because those teams have been pretty bad for my whole life, but it was the Miami Heat who was supposed to be our safe haven. They were supposed to be the savior of South Florida sports fans, but here we stuck in purgatory with no clear direction. Not to be ungrateful, because like I just said, I came home from a championship parade for our hockey team, and many cities would die just to have one championship in one of their sports. But the Miami Heat is my passion. Like, I fell in love with them watching them win championships year after year when I was growing up. So yes, I was very disappointed that we didn't get KD, a guy that I personally been a fan of for a while, and I think at the very least would have made this team exciting to watch again. And I understand a lot of Heat fans didn't want him because he's turning 37, but at some point you got to do something, or we're all just gonna blink and Bam Adebayo is gonna be 35 and ringless. Unfortunately, the Heat haven't put themselves in a spot to trade for the perfect prospect like a Giannis or like a Anthony Edwards if they were to become available. So they could blow it up and trade Bam, Tyler, get as many assets as possible and rebuild like the Oklahoma City Thunder did. Game 7 is tonight, by the way, so their plan worked pretty well when they sold off everyone. Westbrook, Paul George, Melo. Here they are just a few years later, right back in contention. So I'm not opposed to the Heat blowing up. I think that might be their next most productive plan at this point. The problem is they won't. They won't blow it up, right? So their next best option was to take a risk on somebody like Kevin Durant and hope it works out. Yes, he's 37. It would have been a risk. But if you're not going to blow it up, that's what you had to do. Kind of like they did with Jimmy Butler. Obviously, he had a lot of questions surrounding him, whether he was a locker room cancer, but the Heat took the risk. They traded for him, and although they didn't win any rings, I would say that it worked out relatively well. You know, had some good relative success. Got to the finals a few times, just weren't able to close the door. But they took a risk, and it almost worked out. And KD, who knows if it would have worked out? It might have not have. But what I can guarantee won't work is running it back with this same mediocre roster, the same team that just lost in historic fashion in the postseason. I can guarantee that running it back, that won't work. But the Heat keep trying to put Band-Aids on a roster that isn't working, and they also continue to overvalue their own assets. Now, the official trade that got KD to Houston, it involved Houston sending over Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, the number 10 overall pick, and 5 second-round picks. Not a bad haul. You know, while I'm not the biggest fan of Jalen Green, I think he's wildly inefficient and highly overpaid, but he's still very young, only like 23, and definitely has the athleticism and scoring punch to have some nice potential in this league. So he's got some potential. The Suns also got Dylan Brooks, nice starter or very good role player. Had a very nice season last year as a 3-and-D player. And then the number 10 overall pick in this draft definitely has some value. I think there's a lot of guys they could take with that pick that could turn into somebody pretty special. And then, of course, the Rockets or the Suns also got 5 second-round picks too. So a lot of draft capital. Overall, not a bad haul for Phoenix, although the fit with Jalen Green and Devin Booker I think is weird. Like, they just went through this whole problem of having too many ball-dominant players with Tyus Jones and KD and Booker and Beal. Like, now they got Jalen Green. It's a weird fit. Maybe they decide they want to move Jalen Green later on. They could possibly flip him for some more assets. But as of right now, the news is they're going to keep him. So it's a bit of a weird fit, but overall, not a bad package for the Suns. I will admit it. It might have been hard for the Heat to beat that without giving up Khalil Ware, but it sounds like it was possible, because the part that really drove Heat fans crazy is when Shams followed up his breaking news by stating this. He says, the Miami Heat made multiple offers for Durant, but ultimately turned down the opportunity to place Jaime Jaquez Jr., Nikola Jovic, Haywood Highsmith, the number 20th pick in the draft, and other draft assets in a deal. So to me, that means that if I'm reading this properly, that means that the Miami Heat refused to send salary filler, which would have been some combination of Terry, Duncan, Wiggins. Who cares about those guys? But some salary filler, Jaime Jaquez, Jovic, Haywood, the number 20th pick, and maybe another first-round pick. We don't know what the additional draft capital would have been. But it sounds like they believe that that package was too much for Kevin Durant, which to me is crazy. I understand that KD's about to be 37, but I don't think people realize how productive he still is. I think he easily has 2 to 3 more years being a top 10 player in basketball. And do you think without KD that the Miami Heat can be contenders in 2 to 3 years? No! So go get Kevin Durant. What are we worried about Kevin Durant being 37? Oh, he's going to be 37. He's going to retire in a couple years. What are the Heat going to do in the next couple years? Nothing. So go get Kevin Durant, and at the very least, you have a shot. A lot of people will say, oh, KD alone is not enough to make the Heat contenders. I agree, but you get the star and go from there, because there's not one move that could turn the Heat into contenders. So are you saying that the Heat should do nothing because there's one move that won't make them contenders? Just sit back and do nothing? That logic just doesn't make any sense to me. Are those people saying, oh, we should wait for Giannis or we should wait for Anthony Edwards? Because newsflash, that's not happening either. If we couldn't get a 37-year-old on an expiring contract, what the hell makes you think we're going to be in the game for Giannis or Anthony Edwards if those guys become available? And if we sit around and wait for the perfect prospect, that's when nothing's going to happen. And then in the blink of an eye, Bam's either going to be past his prime. We would have wasted his prime just like we wasted the Jimmy Butler years. Or Bam Adebayo would ask for a trade. Because at some point, he's going to want you to trade for one of his friends too that keep wanting to come here. Like, I love Pat Riley, but facts is facts. You have all these stars over the years that want to come to your team and you can't get any of them. That's just being bad at your job. I'm sorry, it is. And at some point, the Heat either have to take that risk, give the package for Kevin Durant that the Suns want, take that risk, or blow it up. That's what they have to do. But right now, they don't want to do either. They don't want to pick a direction. And they didn't want to take the risk because they wanted to hold on to Jaime Jaquez and Nikola Jovic, 2 guys who were in and out of the rotation last year, 2 guys who were nowhere to be found when the Heat were down 55 points versus the Cavaliers in the playoffs. That's the 2 guys that you were refusing to trade? The Heat value these young players, but then they don't put them in the best position to succeed. Seems very hypocritical, right? They refuse to play Jovic at his natural position, won't let him play with the ball in his hands where we know he's the most effective. They try to play him as a corner-sitting stretch 4. He's very versatile with the ball. There's not a lot of players that can do what he does at 6'10", but they say, no, let's run you next to Terry Rozier and completely make you and put you in the position that's not the best for you to succeed. Same thing with Jaime Jaquez, man. They want Jaime Jaquez to be a corner sitter. He's not a shooter. Why do you have him sitting in the corner? But then, we won't trade him for Kevin Durant, but we're also not going to put him in the best position to succeed. The hypocrisy is insane. I'm not saying that I don't believe in these guys, right? I love Jaime Jaquez. Y'all know I love Jaime Jaquez. I love Nikola Jovic, and I do think that they'll play well next year. I think Jaime Jaquez will have a bounce-back season for sure because he specifically struggled, but they can't be the reason that you don't get Kevin Durant, Especially last year, there was games they were playing Terry Rozier 40 minutes a night for 75% of the season instead of helping develop guys like Pelle Larsson and Isaiah Stevens. It's just the hypocrisy is insane. They need to pick a direction. That's kind of where I'm at. I put out this tweet that said, let me get this straight. The Heat will trade Goran Dragic for Kyle Lowry, but they won't trade Jaime Jaquez Jr. for Durant. Goran Dragic is a franchise icon. Just a year prior to trading him, he was the leading scorer in a playoff run that led the Miami Heat to the NBA Finals in 2020. But you traded that guy for a washed-up Kyle Lowry because he was Jimmy Butler's friend? Meanwhile, Bam Adebayo has a bunch of friends, and you won't trade for any of them? People responded to this tweet of mine. They were like, oh, it wasn't just Jaime that they didn't want to include for Durant. They also didn't, or the Suns were also asking for Jovic and Haywood and picks too. And I responded saying, and I would trade all of those guys for the reasons we just mentioned for Kevin Durant. You just lost by the widest margin in NBA history in a postseason. There is no untouchables on your team. There's not. It's a ridiculous logic to think otherwise. Now, as far as Khalil Ware, that was obviously the other sticking point. He's a guy that certainly could have got the deal done. I'm not saying I would have traded picks and Ware because I do think his potential is a lot higher than Jovic and Jaquez. So I understand the Heat's reluctance there. But it does seem like there was a path to get this done without Ware, and that's something that I absolutely would have did. That being said, Ware better turn into perennial all-star the way people are talking about him. You know, I love Ware too, but let's not act like he had some spectacular rookie season. He was good, and he has potential for sure. But the Heat better be right about him. It's not his fault the KD trade didn't happen. I hate to put all this pressure on him. But from the Heat's perspective and the Heat fan perspective, they better be right about him. They better hope that he balls out, and they better put him in a position to succeed. No more waiting until 70% of the season is gone to put him in the starting lineup next to Bam Adebayo when your team sucked before that and Heat fans were clamoring to start wearing Bam 20 games before it happened. Little did you know, they put him together versus Spurs and it worked out. It worked out pretty well. And then in the postseason, you're down 30 points, but no, Ware can only play 20 minutes. I understand Ware wasn't good in the playoffs. He was getting dogged by Jared Allen. I know that. But why are you benching him? You're going to lose with or without him. Might as well get the kid some experience. I just think it was poor coaching by Eric Spoelstra all around last year. And he's a guy that needs to have a better season next year. There's no two ways about it. It will be funny, though. I know I'm getting a little worked up. It'll be funny to look back at this video like 6 years from now when Jace Richardson or Thomas Sorber win their second straight finals MVP as the Heat go back-to-back. Because the good news is we still have our 20th pick in the draft. There's a lot of guys that I like there. Just earlier today, I posted a video about Asa Newell, who is a Heat culture type guy. He'd be cool. But I think my 5 favorite prospects at this point, with the draft just 3 days away, the 5 guys I like the most in the Heat's range is Cedric Coward, Rasheer Fleming, Thomas Sorber, Nolan Troy, and Danny Wolf. I think any of those guys would be pretty cool. Do they have star potential? Maybe a guy like Cedric Coward or something, but I think they'd all be pretty cool. Either way, I think I speak for all Heat fans when I say we move. I also put this tweet out with a couple of photoshops of Reggie Bullock and Draymond Green in Heat jerseys. Obviously, I'm joking. That's part of me coping because it's like, what else is there? Like, nothing, right? I legitimately don't see who else this Heat team can add that would help them outside of a draft pick that can maybe turn into a great player. You know, the news, right? There was another report today that for the millionth time that the Suns are looking to move Bradley Beal. It's like, duh, water is wet. We know this. That report was funny because Pat Riley has the chance to do the funniest thing possible and now trade for Bradley Beal. Imagine he does that. But then, of course, the main guys we're going to hear over the next few weeks is DeMar DeRozan, Jonathan Kuminga. But I just feel like those guys are more Band-Aids on just the mid-roster. I don't see the point in that. So it's probably time to blow it up because you really need the assets. Players don't make it to free agency anymore. So I think banking on cap flexibility for 2026, I think that's kind of a dumb plan. I mean, imagine if the Heat didn't trade so many second-round picks for KZ Okpala or to get off of Dwayne Dedmon's contract. That definitely could have helped in the KD pursuit because the Suns got 5 seconds from Houston. Maybe that could have been something if there was a close call between whose deal they were going to accept. But the Heat couldn't afford to trade 5 second-round picks. They didn't have 5 seconds because of the bad asset management they've had over the last few years. They've made too many mistakes, right? And it's hard to recover when you've dug yourself a hole this deep. Even imagine if they didn't trade a first-round pick for Terry Rozier. Imagine how much better a spot this Heat team would be in if they just had one more extra first-round pick. It's just bad asset management all around and overvaluing of their own assets. And that's how the Miami Heat got in the current spot that they're in right now. But anyways, that's all I got to say for this video. from a content perspective, best believe I was hoping to get KD. He would have carried this channel through the offseason. Right now, I don't know what we'll talk about. Certainly the draft. I am excited about that, but I don't know. We'll find stuff to talk about. I will never prioritize quantity over quality. I'll continue to make sure that every single video I put out on this channel is one that I'm proud of. And so far, a lot of people have been enjoying the content this offseason. And for that, I am really appreciative. Make sure to leave your thoughts down below on what you think about the whole Kevin Durant saga, where you think the Miami Heat go from here. Also, leave a like and subscribe because I do greatly appreciate your support. That being said, I'll talk to y'all in the next video. Peace out, everybody.
Look, pull up in your city trying to get that dead face. Do it on my own, I don't need no dead weight. Had to kill him off, yeah, I need a head space. You know this homegrown bitch don't offend me.